Russians advance backwards. Or how would they call it? They conducting a special reverse operation in two places. One in the south and another one in the east. In addition to that, the leader of Wagner, Evgeny Prigozhin, he made a statement that the offensive in this city is no longer possible. And to make things even worse for the Russian army, Ukrainians are finalizing assembling 40,000 of their new troops for their ultimate counter-offensive. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage, as always beginning with some more cringe material. And today we have everyone's favorite battle babushkas. And what they basically say is that, oh, this government system in America is so complicated and useless. Democrats, Republicans, they don't decide anything. But Elon Musk is a good one. For some reason. And then they say that why would you need so many political parties? Be like Russia. Have a president like Putin. One president, one party. No need to decide anything, no even need to think. Everything is done for you. And well, I mean, for the very first time in this segment, I'm literally speechless. Next, let's really quick talk about some more recent news from Russia, infused still with the propaganda. And if you remember from my yesterday's episode, the building of the Ministry of Defense of Russia was caught on fire, and at first the Russian authorities kinda denied it, but later on they said that yes, there was a teapot brewing some hot water, it spontaneously got caught on fire, and unfortunately it destroyed some documents, and most likely these documents were some kind of evidence against something, but this is what they said happened. And then we have another report that unidentified, still the most complicated English word for me, but basically this drone, unidentified drone with the cameras, fell in the northwestern part of Moscow, right next to the factory which produces S-300 and S-400 missiles. So yeah, the Russian air defense system is not only able to successfully let Ukrainian pilots to cross the border without any restrictions, apparently they are not even able to protect its own capital. But okay, next let's go to another region in Russia, Kaliningrad, where recently it has been made a statement that the local men will be called by the military enlistment offices and they will be presented with the offer, most likely they cannot refuse. And what I mean by that is that the Russian army will be offering them, or to be honest, forcing them to sign a contract to go to the Russian military, and basically, yes, I don't think Russian men will have much choice. It's either you go to Ukraine, or you go to jail for discrediting the Russian army or dodging the draft. And speaking about the complete failure of the Russian air defense and the border patrol, if you remember, in the beginning of March, there was a diversion group which crossed the border in Bryansk region, and originally it was thought that these were Ukrainians, but later it was turned out to be that this was a Russian voluntary corps. The Russian propaganda never acknowledged, even until now, that these were actually Russians. They still continue their narrative that no, these were Ukrainian terrorists. And so, long story short, this Russian voluntary corps once again recently crossed the border and went to the same Bryansk region, and they started talking with the local residents and giving them brochures, speaking against the regime of Putin. But as always, according to Ministry of Defense of Russia, this was this again Ukrainian diversion group which came on the territory of Russia and started eliminating and trying to eliminate local residents, civilians and kids, but brave Russian soldiers were able to repel this attack and destroy the invaders. And the funniest part about this is that they made this statement after the video where they don't do any of these things has been already released. And I mean, the Russian propaganda and the Ministry of Defense just once again got caught in a lie red-handed. Who would have thought, right? But long story short, if you're also not surprised at all, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel? You can also take a look at my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries every single day. The link will be down below. Alright, just a couple more words about the Western military support to Ukraine and the final preparations of Ukraine before their ultimate counteroffensive, and then we'll talk about the advancing backwards the Russians into different places. And first of all, according to the Ministry of Defense of the United Kingdom, this country has just finalized training 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers, and their ultimate goal to train 20,000 by the end of this year. Then we have a news from the United States, which recently signed a contract with the General Dynamics worth of $27 million to build Abrams M1A1 tanks, which will be later sent to Ukraine. And while the counteroffensive preparations continue and the deliveries are still being made, Ukrainians already started using some of the Western military equipment on the front lines, such as for example this American Striker, which you can see from this picture. And by the way, all the additional pictures of these combat machines, as well as other unreleased and uncensored footage, will be available on my Patreon. The link will be down below. And ultimately, according to the Western reports, Ukraine is about to finalize preparing 40,000 of their soldiers, with its main goal to do the ultimate liberating counteroffensive. And obviously at this very moment it is not announced where Ukrainians will attack or when they're going to do it. I mean, this is obviously nonsense to announce your plans to your enemy, right? And for example, such as according to the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Alexei Danilov, only approximately 3 to 5 people in the entire world are aware of these plans. And he also says with 100% certainty that this counteroffensive will happen, and Ukraine will not even need to announce it, because the people will know it for themselves. Alright, and now as promised, let's talk about this special retreat operation, or Russians advancing backwards, and to begin with, we go to the south. And first of all, according to several sources, there were some loud noises which were heard in Melitopol. Then we have this video of absolutely not panicking Russian propagandists, and they talk about Crimea, that Russians are extremely fortifying the borders of this peninsula and are preparing for the upcoming counteroffensive of Ukraine. And to be honest, you no longer hear these victorious, hateful speeches that they give during their TV shows. Right now it feels like more like a desperation hatred. Pretty much exactly the same what was Nazi propagandists were doing in their last years of the Second World War. And so yes, if you remember from one of my previous videos, Russians were already kinda creating the lists of people need to be evacuated from Skadovsk first to Armyansk and then all the way down to the south to the depth of Crimean Peninsula. In addition to that, some soldiers and military equipment have also been spotted retreating to the borders of the Crimean Peninsula, most likely to assist with fortifying these places. And so, as you can see, this is the first case of Russians doing the special retreat operation, and we will talk about the second case, which is happening right now as we speak in the east of Ukraine very soon. So pretty much yes, as you can see, the Ukraine counteroffensive will be so powerful that Russians decided to retreat in advance, before it even begins. And in addition to that, we have some Western sources that Ukraine might be ready to talk with Russia regarding the Crimean situation as soon as their counteroffensive will be successful. What they mean by that is that as soon as Ukraine liberates the majority or maybe even all of its territories except the Crimean Peninsula, which will most likely be the final territory to be liberated, this is when Putin will have no other choice other than to either directly or indirectly speak with Ukrainian authorities. And it does not necessarily mean that Ukraine is ready to give up the peninsula. Most likely they'll be pushing to retake Crimea Crimea through diplomatic measures in order to avoid unnecessary casualties. But in case Russia is still not willing to return Crimea, Ukraine is more than ready to take it back through military terms. Because after all, according to President Zelensky, Ukraine will not negotiate with Putin for as long as even 1 single meter of Ukrainian territory is under Russian occupation. So pretty much yes. And now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the east, why offensive of Russians in Bakhmut is no longer an option, and the second case of Russians advancing backwards. But first of all, we have this picture from Belgorod region where yet another drone has been intercepted. Next we have one more picture from Belgorod region, and as you can see right here, these are these defense structures, which to be honest look very ineffective, and these are called the dragon teeth. And what makes this one so special is that someone during the night spray painted the message, which says that Belgorod is waiting for Ukraine. Next we go to Ukraine itself, and as you can see from this map which shows us the change in territorial control, Ukrainians were able to liberate a little bit more land to the north of Novoselivsk. Then we have the report by the Institute for the Study of War, and let me know in the comments what do you think it's gonna say. And pretty much yes, as majority of you guessed it, Russian offensive continued along Svatove-Crimea road, but they were not able to achieve anything. Next we go to Bakhmut itself, and as you can see from this map, Russians were able to advance a little bit closer to the city center, but the very next day Ukrainians took a little bit land back to the north of this city. And according to the leader of Wagner Evgeny Prigozhin himself, Ukrainians are not planning to leave Bakhmut. There is not a single evidence of them doing this, but in return what they do, they're fortifying their existing positions, especially to the west of this city. And as a result, he concluded that at this very moment no offensive from Russia is possible. Most likely what he means by that is that Russians were able to kinda capture the completely destroyed city whole, and at least in their minds this was some kind of a victory. But obviously, as you remember from one of my previous episodes, this is completely nothing. And ultimately Prigozhin added that in order for a Russian offensive to resume and even be successful in Bakhmut, Russians need to achieve 3 different things. The thing number 1 is to have a proper military command. So, as you can imagine, it is pointless to speak about the other 2, because they will already fail at this stage. But okay, now let's get back to the east of Ukraine, and as you can see from this video, this is just yet another footage of the first-person view drone used by Ukrainians to eliminate the position of the Russians. This is just 1 out of 3 drone footages which I was able to find recently, and I uploaded all of them uncensored and in full versions to my Patreon. There is still 1 week of free access, and the link is down below. And as you go a little bit more to the south, specifically to Novobakhmutivka, we can see that Russians retreated just a little bit to the south of this settlement, which marks it as the second case of Russians advancing backwards in the last couple of days. And the significance of this particular pushback is that according to the Ukrainian intelligence, just in the beginning of this week, Russians were bringing more forces exactly to this place, and was assumed that they'll be used to attack Avdiivka from the north. And in just under 1 week, Ukrainians already started penetrating their defenses. And just as a reminder, Avdiivka was supposed to be the second Bakhmut for Russians, so I mean, it's no wonder we don't hear much news from the Russian side from this settlement, because they started to fail before they even started. So pretty much yes, Ukrainians are finalizing their preparations for the counteroffensive. The Western military equipment already arrives and is being used on the front lines, and in the meantime, Russians are tactically withdrawing and advancing backwards, both from specific places in the south and in the east. And this is even before Ukrainian counteroffensive begins. And then, according to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksiy Reznikov, he is saying, he is hinting, that he hopes and believes so much that this year, 2023, will be the year of Ukrainian victory. And if you want to witness the defeat of Putin's regime together with all of us, just please once again subscribe to my channel. It only takes one click. You can also unlock exclusive badges by becoming my channel member, or just feel free to check out my Patreon or my PayPal. All the links will be found to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.